Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Jason Loftus. I'm here with Ed Klonowski. He's Product Manager for Gaco. This is our third and final installment of our webinar series for 2021. Looking forward to having many more in the future for 2022, but this will be our last one of the year. If you haven't seen our other previous webinar installments, the first one being coatings and how to choose the right type of coating for your roof. Second one was the economical and environmental impacts of coatings. Today we're going to be covering the evolution of coatings. So more of a timeline, history of coatings from inception to where we are today with modern coatings and really its uses in maintenance applications and as roof assemblies.
Right, and to really, I'm sure none of you guys want to hear a history lesson to start off with, but I think it's important to realize some of the history and how long these products have truly been around. And to do that, we'll go back about 7,000 years, so back to the 5th millennium BC. And that's where we see the first use of a liquid applied coating, in this case tar, used over thatch roofs to waterproof buildings. Now if you fast forward 2,000 years, so now we're talking 7th millennium BC, that is where we see the first introduction of a cold process waterproofing technology. And it's back in ancient Egypt, using very conventional materials like beeswax to create varnishes for their products. But it's really the 19th century that we see the real evolution when we talk about coatings in roofing purposes. And back then it started with the old tar and rag felt systems, which evolved into the more traditional asphalt and fiberglass reinforced systems are very similar to today's built-up roofing solutions. Now, in the latter half of the 19th century is where we started to see a true emergence of traditional liquid applied cold process coatings as we know them today. So now we're talking acrylics, urethane, silicone, stuff of that nature. And there was a number of driving factors behind that, but a couple of the major ones being, obviously there's some inherent risk with the hot process systems, having torches on roofs, some of the kettles, stuff of that nature, obviously, trying to steer away from that for safety reasons. But then also the movement to more reflective and cool roofs was a huge driver in really pushing coatings into prevalence.
Right.
And even, compared to traditional roof coatings. So
bringing us to the timeline of modern day coatings, right? So as Ed mentioned, three main chemistries, silicone, acrylic, urethane, and then I think it's also important to note the emergence of polyureas. We're seeing what's old is new and new is old, right? So we're seeing those come back into market. One of my favorite slides, and I think a great way to kick off today's webinar, and what this does is kind of validates or timestamps the success that coatings have had in market. So we'll go all the way back to 1960s, where we had the emergence of spray polyurethane foam in roofing applications, and at that same time, silicone. Silicone and SPF, or spray polyurethane foam roofs, significance there is its use together back in the 1960s. SPF, not UV stable. It tends to burn very quickly if exposed to UV. Silicone, one of its biggest advantages, we've talked about it in the chemistry before, is its tolerance to UV, right? So it doesn't break down. Followed shortly thereafter, we're going to compare this to the single plies of today's world. Obviously, your largest amount of roofs that you see go down is your PVC, EPDM, and TPO roof systems, right, for your conventional. So in the 1960s, we have SPF and silicone, followed there by PVC. In the 70s, you had the emergence of urethane coatings along with acrylic chemistries. That was around the same timeline as your EPDM roofs. 1980s when your polyureas came out, and then mid-80s, you saw the RCMA, Roof Coating Manufacturers Association. The emergence of RCMA, really, again, another validation to the coatings industry, formalized the roof coating manufacturers, right? So we're members of RCMA. We have meetings we're talking about code approvals, code adoptions, language to be used when discussing coatings. Also a great way to measure share in market from different roof coating manufacturers. 1990, we saw the emergence of TPO, probably the fastest growing, or if not probably, it is the fastest growing single ply segment in the roofing world today. I like this point in the timeline because you look at silicone and then you look at TPO, 30-year gap. Again, validation of coatings in market. And then in early 2000s, the CRRC, which another code adoption, certification, if you will, that again stamps coatings, the validation. You'll find today in past webinars and in future webinars, I bring this conversation up a lot because codes are going to be one of the largest drivers of coatings in the future.
Right, and speaking of kind of the validation of coatings, we talked about its history, 7,000 years ago, but even the more recent history, the last 70 or 80 years, if we look at the overall roofing market in the U.S., commercial roofing makes up about an $8 billion market, of which coatings actually represents 20% of that from a square footage standpoint. So coating has a very strong foothold compared to all the other technologies out there, second only to TPO. If you compare that against, even SBS, APP, PVC, it's the same amount as all three of those combined. So substantial, a lot of square footage.
I always like to bring this part up. We have a slight advantage when we're looking at this too, because when you look at the other systems that you can use out there, maybe primarily that was the first time it was used, maybe the second time. But I always like to say, at some point we'll coat it because we can be used over all of those existing substrates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And because of that, you see coatings being one of the fastest growing segments of the traditional roofing market, outpacing standard growth rates by 3-4% year over year. But within the coating segment, there are a number of different chemistries as we've previously discussed. You talk about the older non-reflective bituminous or asphalt-based systems. Mm-hmm. Obviously, those are contracting from a market share standpoint to the advantage of reflective systems. But even within reflective systems, acrylics has always been the lion's share. Currently represents about 42%, but is contracting as newer technologies become more prevalent. So now we're talking silicones, which has been growing substantially over the last decade.
Yep.
But then more recently, you have your urethanes, your polyureas, your PMMA, stuff of that nature, which are growing by double digits year over year. So a lot of opportunity with these systems going into the future.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of gotten the history lesson, thanks Ed, on the use of coatings, we've seen the evolution of coatings. Let's talk about where coatings are used. Mm-hmm. So we're going to cover two segments, really the only two that are available for coatings, and that is for use as a maintenance application and then as an actual roof assembly. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with maintenance applications, spend the majority of our time on maintenance applications because I would say that's roughly 95% of the use of a roof coating. Mm-hmm. So it's used in a maintenance application. I always like to discuss the fact that coatings are not a fix-all, right? If you have a bad roof, you have a bad roof. Putting a coating on it doesn't make it better. So if you have a TPO roof and you need to do some repairs, remove some TPO, you don't just coat it. We push like product, like repair, right? You have to put TPO down first. Yeah. And then you can coat your roof. So some of the advantage, it's less intrusive. So if you're talking maybe hospitals, schools, condos, a retail operation where you don't want to actually shut down.
Yeah, you have to stay functional. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Coatings is a great. There's a great advantage there in using coatings. Talked about this on some previous webinars, but the performance with color changes. 70% of all existing roofs in the U.S. are non-reflective. So again, code-driven, energy sufficient or energy savings, being able to take that non-reflective roof and turn it into a reflective roof. And then, of course, cost-effective.
Mm-hmm. And above and beyond that, another common misconception is these systems perform to the same level as traditional roofing systems, so your single-ply membranes. So they offer similar warranties, full NDL warranties, leak-free warranties for 5, 10, 20 years or more, depending on the chemistry and the amount used. Now, these warranties do come with the same type of stipulations as your traditional single-ply systems, so obviously there are warranty fees that apply. They have to be applied by a licensed applicator.
Gaco
Make sure
licensed
you have
applicator.
trained license to install the particular system. There are final inspections to make sure the system was installed properly. All of the same things that you would do for a traditional single-ply roof go and apply
Gaco
to
does the exact same thing.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, what is part of that process? Again, much like the conventional roofing side, as a contractor, you're going to want to have all of this ready. As a building owner, you're going to want to receive all of this, or as a consultant or architect, you're going to want to be able to see the vision of, okay, they're operating the same, right? So technical data sheets, specifications specific to the substrate. So on Gaco's website, we have, I think, over 80 different specifications available. Again, specific to the substrate, what we're covering. Details, drawings, again, all available on Gaco.com. A sample warranty, much like what you just discussed. So the ultimate decision maker is going to want to see that. And then specific to Gaco, I would like to call out one of the things that we do is our consultations. Right?
Right.
So being able to go up there, take pictures, maybe point out some things, and then give that to the contractor for him to make the decision, do they want to do this roof or not?
Right, and speaking of the contractor, another thing to mention here is, labor considerations when you talk about coatings. We mentioned earlier that, the labor force that's used to install these systems is specialized. It's not as simple as just going up there and rolling out a coating. These are people that are trained formally and licensed to install these systems properly.
Yeah, they need to be able to know how to fix the roof before they apply a coating on a roof, right?
Right. But when we start talking about the labor side of things, obviously today's market labor is extremely constrained.
Yeah.
And one of the things with coatings is they typically require substantially smaller crews to install a full coating versus a traditional single-ply or built-up roofing system.
Right.
So in a market where it's hard to find labor, more roofs for the same amount of people.
Correct.
Additionally, from a turnaround time perspective, these systems are also faster to install. You're really only reliant on the cure out of the product,
right.
Which depending on chemistry and your environment can be accelerated substantially compared to a traditional system. And the last thing to call out here is equipment to get started. You can get into coatings relatively simplistically, with as much as a roller and a notch squeegee.
Right.
You're not reliant on generators, welders, stuff of that nature to install some of the more traditional systems.
Right. Although there is specific equipment for technology.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can certainly go and get spray rigs, which allow you to keep your material on ground level and just pump it onto the roof.
Right.
Spray it or apply it that way. There's many options.
Okay, so now that we've talked about kind of where we're using it in maintenance applications, again, my favorite subject, I go back to codes and approvals and certifications a lot. So let's start with the big one, FM approvals. This is one of the items that we focused on heavily over a decade ago at Gaco, and I think really helped propel us into the forefront and as a leader in the coatings world today, and that is the factory mutual approvals. So for those of you who don't know, FM approvals, factory mutual, it's an insurance company, right? So what we've gone out and really pushed on, much like conventional roofing, you always see they have to be FM approved, or they push to be FM approved as a system, right? Our coatings, we push out as FM approved, meaning that it's factory mutual insurance approved. So what does that mean? It's as a maintenance application, what does that mean? It means when you put our coatings down, if we have FM approvals on those coatings, it's specific to those substrates. It doesn't change the current FM rating for wind, fire, and hail.
Right. And it's not just FM. I mean, FM only covers and insures about 25-30% of the buildings out there. There are a number of other bodies out there. The biggest sibling to FM is UL, Underwriters Laboratory. So similar, once again, an insurance company that has specifications for roof assemblies. But then you start getting into some of the more state-specific ones. You have Miami-Dade, Florida NOAs, Texas Department of Insurance, Title 24, all of these other code agencies which test to similar UL and ASTM standards, but have some enhanced requirements given their location that best suits the needs of those facilities that are seeing wide adoption, not just in those states, but also in surrounding regions that have similar weather patterns and considerations to take into account.
Okay, so we've covered maintenance, applications, and there is that second part, and that is the liquid applied roof systems. So there's two primary systems out there. The first one is your spray polyurethane foam with coatings as a protective top coat. Okay, and your second one is your liquid applied membranes, which is generally what you would say you're reinforced or scrimmed. So you use actually full fabric throughout your system. Both of those, the two, if not only prevalent roof assemblies out there. And I want to call that out too, right? Spray polyurethane foam with a protective top coat is a UL or FM roof assembly, right? So it's it's actually not just a coating at that point, which is maintenance, but actually a roof assembly as a system.
Right, and let's actually look into a little more detail about some of the benefits of the spray polyurethane foam and coating system. First, let's focus on the base layer, which is going to be your insulation. So with a typical assembly, you would use traditional rigid iso boards, so multiple layers, staggering your joints to account for thermal bridges and stuff of that nature. With spray polyurethane foam, one of the huge advantages is since you're manufacturing it on site, you create a completely monolithic insulation system. So from corner to corner, obviously it's self-flashing, so around all of your penetrations, up against any rooftop units, so on and so forth, you have a solid insulation unit providing some of the best thermal performance of any system out there.
And it's self-adhering.
Self-adhering, yeah. I mean, for those of you that have used spray polyurethane foam before, that stuff sticks to everything and sticks very well. So once again, maintaining uplift to a phenomenal level.
One of the best out there available.
Yeah,
right?
even compared to traditional systems. Since it is monolithic, once again, you're creating an air and vapor barrier. Once again, fabricating stuff in the field means you can correct for drainage if you need to install a cricket or something to help channel water to scuppers or roof drains. But another big advantage is transportation. If you're installing traditional rigid board insulation, basically you're shipping air. And you have to ship a lot of it to cover a roof. So 5, 10, 15 trucks is not uncommon for a pretty typical roof. Whereas spray polyurethane foam, you're only shipping the chemicals, so a single truck can do a similar sized job since you're manufacturing the product on site. So massive savings there from a transportation standpoint. So we finished that, and once again, it needs to be coated, not UV stable, which is where you get into your monolithic waterproofing layer, and that's one of the huge benefits of the liquid applied roofing system at this point. You're not reliant on glued or welded seams. All of the different joints associated with your flat sheet goods. You go out, you install this, just like your foam, it is a monolithic waterproofing membrane, fully self-adhered, self-flashing, lightweight, tons of advantages with this type of system.
And an actual roof assembly.
And a roof assembly that meets UL, FM requirements among all of the other state level requirements as well.
So what does a Gaco system look like, right? We've covered all this, but let's put it all together now, right? 1, specifications specific to substrate. 2, your NDL warranty. 3, your FM approvals or code certifications, Texas Department of Insurance, whatever it may be that the ultimate decision maker is requesting or looking for to get their performance that they want out of that system. So that's kind of a wrap up of what our Gaco system looks like from buttoning it up, right, and getting the process through. What does it actually look like on a roof, right?
Yeah, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at a maintenance assembly. So let's assume we have a traditional metal corrugated roof panel. You have your standard rigid iso board over top, so an ISO 95 plus or an ISO guard type insulation product, and then it's covered with a fully adhered full force EPDM system or something along those lines. Been in existence for 15, 20, 30 years, and it's time it's still in good shape.
System.
Yeah, great system, still in good shape. You want to make sure everything's still performing well, repair as needed with like material, but then it's a matter of cleaning with some type of appropriate cleaner like Gaco Prime, and then coming back, priming and coating the surface. It's that simple to get another 5, 10, 20 years out of that roofing system.
Right. It's a maintenance. You're being proactive or you're extending the life of the existing roof.
Correct.
But you need a roof.
You need it in sound condition.
So if it's actually where you need to actually do a roof assembly, now you're looking at a liquid applied roofing system. So your SPF and your protective top coat, what we'll focus on, same thing, metal deck. You're looking at the assembly on the screen, hopefully. You'll have a cover board, your spray polyurethane foam, and then your coating. You'll notice when it comes to spray polyurethane foam and coating, you generally don't need a primer. You don't need a primer. The only time you would need a primer is we have one called A4121, and that's basically a protective primer.
Yeah, UV protectant.
So if you have, if you're doing 1,000 squares and you're not able to get back to it in time to coat it before the UV would burn it, you can actually put down one of our primers to protect it until you come back and top coat it.
Right.
So to recap our liquid applied roofing systems, a couple things to keep in mind. One, these are UL and FM approved roof assemblies, right? And secondly, the warranties are extremely similar, if not identical, to your conventional roofing with your 5 to 20 year NDLs. In fact, with silicone, we don't even have a pond and water exclusion.
Right. And above and beyond that, coatings and traditional roofing system open up a lot of hybrid opportunities. If it's different chemistries, a polyurea with a silicone top coat, if it's combining traditional roofing systems with coatings, if you want to use traditional rigid polyiso board as a base layer, inch or two of spray foam over top and a coating over top, you're starting to combine traditional systems with coatings to take advantage of cost plays, performance plays. There's all kinds of opportunities there to combine these systems. But the last thing I would say is, Gaco obviously owned by Firestone, so we do manufacture our coatings, we manufacture single ply, we manufacture insulation. All of the compatibility of these systems, from traditional to coatings and the hybrids in between, have been tested internally to perform to all the different UL, FM standards that we mentioned previously.
Ed, I think we're wrapping it up here.
At least for 2022.
Yeah, or 2021.
That too.
Yeah. The history of coatings, the evolution of coatings, how to choose the right type of coating, environmental, economic impacts of coatings. It's been a fun year with this, but as we state every time, this is a 100,000-foot view, and we always want to get you that street level view. So we have a full coverage of teammates out there between our Firestone reps and our Gaco teammates that can help you with your day-to-day needs. So go to gaco.com/representatives and get to know your local area manager. Thank you.